Good evening, everybody. So, we are going to start our course with environment and ecology. Okay. We are going to start our course with environment and ecology, and there's the live chat, right? You can ask me any question at any time. I'll address your questions. I'll get back to your question as soon as possible. So, anyway, we are just going to start with the first chapter, that is basics concept chapter. So let's just begin. So guys who are present, just say something here, right, in the chat. Just want to make sure that you're able to watch the video, the live video. So just say something. So guys, just say something if you are there. Okay. So now, let me just continue. So now, in today's session, we'll be discussing about all these things, all the basic concepts. We'll be discussing about environment, habitat, biosphere, ecosystem, biogeochemical cycles, decomposition, classification of ecosystems, food chain, types of food chains, that is grazing food chain and detritus food chain, food web, the concept of ecology, very important. The name of our subject, the name of the course is environment and ecology. So we will understand the meaning of ecology, and there's a very important concept in ecology called levels of ecological organization. So this is just part 1 of the first chapter. After this, in tomorrow's session, we are going to discuss part 2 of the first chapter, and then we'll be done with the first chapter, and then we can move on to the second chapter, which is wetlands. Very, very important from exam perspective. Okay. Okay then, moving on. So, environment. Environment is the surroundings in which biotic, that is living, and abiotic, that is non-living factors, interact with each other. So just look around you. You find both living things and non-living things. The living things are called biotic, the non-living things are called abiotic. So basically, environment is nothing but the space in which we are, okay, our surroundings, in which we find both living things and non-living things. And if you look at the living things and non-living things, you'll find that there is interaction happening between living things and non-living things. Like, for example, we breathe in air. Air is a non-living thing. And you're sitting on chair, I'm sitting on chair. That means we are, interacting with the chair. We are applying weight on the chair. Okay. And also, the living things, they also interact with each other. So, environment is nothing but the surrounding space in which we find both living things and non-living things. And the living things and non-living things are interacting with each other. Okay. The living things are called biotic, and the non-living things are called abiotic. As simple as that. Now, forget about biotic for some time. Focus on abiotic. So when I say abiotic, these are the various things. First, physical factors. That is nutrients, water, air, etc. Now, what do you mean by nutrients? Nutrients are nothing but the chemicals which will help an organism to live, which will help an organism to grow and sustain its life processes. That is the meaning of nutrients. Okay? So, nutrients, water, air, and all the other non living things. Okay? And next, you also have the biotic, that is nothing but the living organisms. And also, there is interaction between living organisms and non living organisms. This entire system together is environment. As simple as that. So, if you have any doubt, you can just ask me immediately. Okay, don't hesitate, ask me immediately. So, I'm looking at the live chat. So, as soon as you type in your query, I'll get back to you. Okay. So, this is very simple, right? Everybody's understanding this. I hope there are no issues. Okay. Now, all the organisms, they depend on environment to sustain their life. What do you mean by sustaining life? To carry on various processes like respiration, metabolism, digestion, excretion, reproduction, circulation. Okay, all these are the various life processes. To carry out all these life processes, living organisms depend on environment. As simple as that. So just look at this point, very, very important. All organisms are dependent on the environment to carry out their natural life processes. What do you mean by natural life processes? The list of things which I just told you. Okay, so respiration, circulation, digestion, okay, and then reproduction, excretion, so many other things. So, what are the physical requirements that are required to carry out all these life processes? You need food, you need water, you need oxygen, you need shelter. Okay, so food translates to energy. All these things are given by environment. Okay, now, very simple point, right? Now, just look at this, very, very important. The environment is not static. What do you mean by that? The environment doesn't stay like that forever. Environment is highly dynamic. What do you mean by environment in the first place? The physical surroundings in which you find living things, non-living things, and the interactions between living things and non-living things. That is the environment. So both biotic and abiotic factors are changing. They are highly dynamic. And also the interactions between living things and non-living things will also keep on changing. So environment as a whole is not static. That means it is not stationary. It doesn't stay like that forever. Environment is highly dynamic, keeps on changing. Okay, so that means both biotic and abiotic factors are, constantly changing, and also their interactions will keep on changing constantly. So that is about environment. So I hope you're all understanding this. Very simple, right? Okay. So moving on, just give me 1 second. Okay. Now, the next concept is habitat. So what do you mean by habitat? Very simple. Habitat is the place where an organism lives. As simple as that. So what is our habitat? Our habitat is the city, right? We live in cities, we live in towns and villages. So these are our habitats. So habitat is the environment, or it is the place in environment where an organism lives. It is as simple as that. And also, a single habitat may be common for more than one organism which has similar requirements. Clear? Just 1 second. Okay, so now let us again resume our discussion about habitats. So a single habitat may be common for more than one organism which has similar requirements. For example, fish, frog, crab, phytoplankton, and many other kinds of organisms. They all live in aquatic habitat because they have similar requirements. Okay, so in this way, a single habitat may be common for more than one type of organism which has similar requirements. Very simple. Now, don't worry about what is phytoplankton. We will discuss about what is phytoplankton in great detail. That's a very important concept. So as of now, don't worry about that. We are just in the first class. We have so many classes to finish. We have so much topic to finish. So these are just the basic things. Okay. And these seem to be very simple, but these are very important. And each and every concept that we are discussing right now is a previously asked question. Okay. So we should not take these for granted. And prelims has become highly dynamic, right? It has become highly unpredictable. So if at all you get any such topics in films, you should not miss them. Okay, so these are your scoring things. Because paper will be designed like this. You'll have easy questions, moderately tough questions, and also you'll have tough questions. 3 types. So all these come under easy. Okay, and you're not supposed to miss these. Okay. Now, just to get this point, very important. We'll just try to understand the meaning of this. All habitats are part of the environment, but all the places in the environment are not habitats. Very important. So what do you mean by this? All the habitats are part of the environment. Okay? But all the places in the environment are not habitats. That means in the environment, there are certain places where conditions are extreme. That means life cannot exist there. There are some places like that. For example, consider the top of Mount Everest, the summit of Mount Everest. So Mount Everest is around 8,848 meters high. Okay. And also, do you know that the height of Mount Everest keeps on increasing? Not only Mount Everest, the elevation of all Himalayas will keep on increasing each and every single year. So what is the reason behind that? That we'll discuss in geography. Just don't worry about that. So currently the height of Mount Everest is 8,848 meters. So just imagine the summit of Mount Everest. So oxygen is very low there. Okay, the higher we go, the less dense the air becomes. So air is very thin at such high elevations. That is the reason mountaineers who are trying to reach the summit of Mount Everest, they carry their own oxygen with them. So oxygen is very less, air is very thin, and also it is very cold. Okay, so conditions are extreme, and you cannot find any life here. Okay, and also just imagine the bottom of Mariana Trench. So you know that Mariana Trench is the deepest point in the Earth's crust. Mount Everest is the highest point on the Earth's crust, and Mariana Trench is the deepest point in the Earth's crust. So Mariana Trench is around 11 kilometers deep, 11 kilometers below the sea level. So there the pressure is extremely high. Okay, it is millions of times more than the atmospheric pressure at the ground level. Just for comparison. So just imagine a person standing at the bottom of Mariana Trench. That person has to bear the weight of 11 kilometers, thick layers of water. So the pressure is extremely high there. So again, lack of oxygen, okay, and lack of sunlight. So these are some of the places where conditions are extreme. So there living organisms cannot exist. So that is the reason all habitats are part of environment, but all the places in the environment are not habitats. That means not all the places in environment can support life. There are certain places in environment where conditions are very extreme, and those extreme conditions are not suitable for existence of any type of living organism. So this point is very important. But again, there are certain organisms called extremophiles. Extremophiles. Extremophiles are those organisms that like to survive in very challenging environments, in very challenging habitats, in very extreme places. Okay. Like for example, Just look at this. Extremophiles are organisms with the ability to live in extreme environments, such as hydrothermal vents, acidic and anaerobic environments. So, this is a hydrothermal vent. Hydrothermal vents are found at deep sea. Okay, they are found on the sea floor. Okay, from these hydrothermal vents, hot magma keeps coming to the surface. So, water here becomes very hot and the water will get evaporated. It will be converted into water vapor. And also from these hydrothermal vents, very toxic gases like sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, these will keep on coming from the hydrothermal vents. So, there are certain organisms, bacteria mostly, that like to live in and around, on and around these hydrothermal vents. So, they can be considered as extremophile, okay, and also acidic environment. See, most of the living organisms cannot live in acidic environment, but there are certain very tough and very resistant bacteria that can survive in acidic environment. And what do you mean by anaerobic? Anaerobic condition means there is no oxygen, there is no air. So there are certain microorganisms that can survive in anaerobic conditions also. Okay, so when you talk about hydrothermal vent, first of all, it is at the seafloor, so it is very deep and no sunlight reaches here, and also the oxygen concentration is very less, so you can consider this to be anaerobic environment. Okay, and also hot magma keeps coming to the surface from the hydrothermal vent, and also release of toxic gases. So the conditions here are very extreme, but in spite of that, certain microorganisms, mostly bacteria, live around these hydrothermal vents. Okay, so yes, there are certain organisms called extremophiles, but again, extremophiles are not found everywhere in the environment. There are certain places in the environment which are even extreme for extremophiles. I hope you're understanding. There are certain places in the environment which are even extreme for extremophiles. Even extremophiles cannot survive there. Okay, so that is the reason all habitats are part of the environment, but all the places in the environment are not habitats. Okay, so just don't worry about hydrothermal vents. Whatever you understood here, that is more than enough, because anyway, we will be discussing about hydrothermal vents in great detail in geography. Okay, geography, first section is geomorphology, and then we have climatology, and then we have Indian geography, and then we have economic geography, and then human geography. It is going to be the most comprehensive course ever. Okay, so there we'll discuss about the magmatic processes, volcanoes, hydrothermal vents, and all that. So just don't worry now. So I hope this is clear, guys. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Just don't hesitate. You can just type in the live chat and then I'll get back to your doubt. Okay, so I hope you understood hydrothermal vents. And trust me, whatever you understood here, that is more than enough. Anyway, we will discuss about vents and all that in great detail in geography. Okay. So anyway, moving on. Now, just look at this. Bacteria often form on the rocks near the hydrothermal vents. Since extremophiles live in extreme environments, what do you mean by extreme environment? High pressure, high temperature, or acidic environment? Okay, so look at this point, very, very important. Since extremophiles live in extreme environments, that means under high pressure, high temperature, they can tell us under which range of conditions life is possible. Okay, that means life can only exist in few places. For example, this is the range of conditions in which life can exist. These are the normal conditions in which you and I live. And these are the extreme conditions in which extremophiles live. But even these extremophiles, which are mostly microorganisms, they can only tolerate certain range of extreme conditions. Beyond that, life cannot exist. Okay, even though extremophiles live in extreme environments, even though extremophiles live in those environments where there is high pressure, high temperature, or acidic environment, they can only tolerate those extreme conditions up to a certain extent. Beyond that, even they cannot survive. Okay, so that is the reason extremophiles can tell us under which range of conditions life is possible. Okay, so if you think that this is the range of conditions in which life can exist, just imagine that these are the normal conditions. Normal temperature, normal pressure, everything is normal. You and I are living here. And these are extreme conditions in which extremophiles are living. And even those extremophiles cannot exist beyond a range of conditions. They can only tolerate extreme conditions up to a certain extent. Beyond that, even they cannot tolerate. Okay, so that is the meaning of this point. I hope you're understanding. And we are calling them as extremophiles because they live in extreme environments where high temperature and high pressure are there. But for those organisms, it is normal conditions. That is the reason this last point. These organisms are extreme only from human perspective. For us, high pressure and high temperature are extreme conditions. But for those organisms, high pressure, high temperature, or very acidic environment, all these are normal conditions. I hope you understood. Okay? Clear, right? Very good. Now, let us look at this. This point is very, very important. I just want everybody to understand this. All habitats are part of the environment, but all the places in the environment are not habitats. Okay? Very, very, very important. Now, what is the difference between habitat and environment? So in our course, we will ask ourselves few fundamental questions. Like for example, this question. What is the difference between habitat and environment? Because when you ask yourself such questions and when you try to answer these questions, you'll get immense conceptual clarity. And trust me guys, UPSC Civil Services exam is all about conceptual clarity. Okay? So anyway, what is the difference between habitat and environment? First of all habitats are part of the environment. Okay? But all the places in the environment cannot be treated as habitats. Because in the environment, there are certain extreme places where conditions are extreme and life cannot exist there. So, look at this. A habitat always has life in it, whereas the environment does not necessarily have life in it. For example, the bottommost layer of atmosphere is troposphere, and then you have stratosphere, and then you have mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere. Now, do you think that life can exist in exosphere or thermosphere? No. But even those layers of the atmosphere are still part of the environment. But there the conditions are too extreme for life to exist. So habitat always has life in it. That is the reason why you are calling it as habitat, because a living organism is living there. But environment does not necessarily have life in it. That means all habitats are part of the environment. But environment is a very huge place. There are many places in the environment where life cannot exist. So that is the difference. Look at this. There are certain places in the environment where the living conditions are extreme and life cannot exist. Very simple examples: summit of Mount Everest and the bottom of Mariana Trench. Okay. So Challenger Deep is a submersible vehicle. It is like a submarine. So it reached Mariana Trench, the bottom of Mariana Trench, for the first time. Okay, so Mariana Trench bottom is around 11,035 meters below sea level. That means 11 kilometers below sea level. Just imagine the tremendous pressure that would exist there at the bottom of Mariana Trench. Okay, so it's very, very huge. Clear, right? Okay, moving on. Now, we'll just look at some of the examples of extremophiles because, these organisms will keep on coming in news. And also, such things are very interesting, right? So let us make our course more interesting, more fun to learn. So we are just going to discuss some examples of extremophiles. First example, tardigrades. Okay. So tardigrades are tiny invertebrates. What do you mean by invertebrate? Very simple. We don't have to discuss any biology. If you just understand the meaning of the word invertebrate, that is enough. Invertebrate means any organism that doesn't have any vertebral column. Like we have the backbone, right? Vertebral column. So invertebrates are those organisms that don't have vertebral column. Okay. Now tardigrades, their size is 1 millimeter or less. Now, look at tardigrades. They are virtually found everywhere. They are found in soil, plants, deserts, fresh water, as well as salt water. That is nothing but seas and oceans. They are literally found everywhere. Now, what is so special about tardigrades? Look at this point, you'll understand. Their most remarkable feature is their ability to withstand extremely low temperatures and extreme dryness. Look at this. Tardigrades are also found in deserts. So they are able to withstand extreme dryness. And not only that, they can even withstand extremely low temperatures. Okay. Now, how come they are able to withstand very low temperatures and extreme dryness? Very simple. Under unfavorable conditions. Okay. Like for example, just imagine that tardigrades are living in forest. Normally, the conditions are suitable. But just imagine that there is a drought in the forest. What do you mean by drought? There is no rainfall, conditions become very dry. The soil becomes very dry. All the moisture in the soil will get evaporated. Soil will become very dry. Okay, all the plants will die. So these are unfavorable conditions. So these tardigrades, they go into a state of suspended animation. That means they are still alive, but they become completely inactive. They don't move, they don't eat, they don't do anything. They remain completely inactive. That is the meaning of suspended animation. Okay? So these are adaptation mechanisms. What do you mean by adaptation? What are the various adaptation mechanisms? All this we'll discuss tomorrow in tomorrow's session. And all these are very, very important, guys. Okay? The concept of adaptation and acclimatization, evolution, all these are important concepts in ecology. Okay? So not only the meaning of adaptation, we'll also look at various adaptation mechanisms tomorrow. We'll discuss all those in great detail. Just don't worry about that. Okay. Now, when conditions are unfavorable, tardigrades, they get into the state of suspended animation. And look at this. So amazing, right? Tardigrades can survive in this state for years or even decades. Okay, even for 10 years or 20 years, they can remain in suspended animation. So it means they'll remain in suspended animation until conditions become favorable again. And then they'll become active again. That is their adaptation mechanism. That is the reason tardigrades are considered to be one of the toughest organisms. Do you know that tardigrades were taken on to International Space Station, which is in low Earth orbit? So what do you mean by low Earth orbit? What is International Space Station? What is the future of that? Everything we'll discuss in great detail in Science and Technology. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay, sorry about that. So anyway, I hope you understood this. Okay, moving on. Now, look at this. Tardigrades can also survive in vacuum for up to 8 days. Look at this. Vacuum means there's no air at all. And in a temperature of minus 272 degrees Celsius for several hours. Just look at this. Minus 272 degrees Celsius. Extremely low temperature. Tardigrades can survive there in extremely low temperature for many hours. And they come back to life again when they are brought to normal room temperature. So that is about tardigrades. These are very, very tough. Okay, so tardigrades are one of the best examples of extremophiles. Moving on, the next example is very special. The next example is a bacteria called Dinococcus Radiodurants. Now, this is considered to be the toughest bacteria on planet Earth. Toughest bacteria. Dinococcus Radiodurants. It can withstand high dosage nuclear radiation also. We all know how dangerous nuclear radiation is, right? But Dinococcus Radiodurants, it can even withstand high dosage nuclear radiation. Okay, so it is one of the most resistant microorganisms on planet Earth, and it is considered to be the world's toughest known bacteria. So look at these points. Dinococcus radiodurans. This is the microscopic image of this bacteria. It is an extremophilic bacteria. It is one of the most radiation resistant organisms known. Nuclear radiation is highly dangerous. Do you know why nuclear radiation is highly dangerous? Because nuclear radiation will cause damage to DNA, and that causes mutation in genes, and that will lead to cancer. Okay, so this bacteria can withstand that. Just imagine. And not only that, it can survive cold, dehydration, and even vacuum. So it has been listed as the world's toughest known bacteria in the Guinness Book of World Records. That is about Dinococcus radiodurans. So these are the best examples of extremophiles. Very simple, right? Okay, moving on. Now, we have understood the concepts of environment and then habitat. Now let us come to a very, very important concept called biosphere. Okay, now this is very important, and this is one of the most misunderstood concepts. It is not properly understood by many aspirants. Now, the earth can be thought of as a system with many components. Like, for example, just think about a desktop computer. You have many components, right? You have CPU, and then you have monitor, you have keyboard. In the same way, the entire earth can be thought of as a system with many components. First component, lithosphere. So what do you mean by lithosphere? All the land mass. And next, hydrosphere. What do you mean by that? All the water. Okay, let it be oceans or let it be freshwater bodies like rivers, lakes, ponds. That is hydrosphere. And then you have atmosphere. So what do you mean by atmosphere? The layer of gases surrounding the earth. Atmosphere. And what is so special about earth? Earth is the only planet that supports life as far as we know. Okay. In the near future, we might discover any alien life. We don't know. But as far as we know, in the entire universe, Earth is the only planet that can support life, which has life, as far as we know. So that is the speciality of Earth. That means Earth also has one more component called biosphere. Okay, you understood lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, right? Earth also has one more component called biosphere. So biosphere is the biological component of Earth. Biosphere includes all living organisms, and if I just speak about living organisms, it doesn't make any sense. It is completely incomplete. Okay. Whenever I speak about living organisms, I should also speak about the interactions of living organisms with the environment. Again, when I say environment, I'm referring to lithosphere, which is land, hydrosphere, which is water, and atmosphere. Okay. So biosphere is the biological component of Earth. It includes all the living organisms, and the interaction of living organisms with lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. As simple as that. So basically, biosphere is the fourth and biological component of Earth. Biosphere consists of all the living organisms on planet Earth, starting from the tiniest microorganism to the largest blue whale, each and every organism. And also the organic matter produced by living organisms. That means when living organisms die, they're dead bodies. Even that is organic matter. What do you mean by organic matter? Any material that is produced or that is coming from living organisms. That is the meaning of organic matter. So all living organisms along with the dead organic matter and also interactions of organisms with lithosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere is biosphere. So many times when people say biosphere, you think that biosphere is a combination of lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere. No, that's totally wrong. It doesn't make any sense. Earth has many components: lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere. So biosphere is the fourth and separate component of Earth. Okay. So when I say biosphere, it means all the living organisms, along with that dead organic matter, and also the interaction. The keyword is interaction here. Interaction of living organisms with lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. See, living organisms live on land, they live in water, and also they live in air. Living organisms need air. Okay, they breathe air. So that means they are interacting with the atmosphere. So that interaction is biosphere. Now, why am I taking interaction into consideration? If I just talk about living organisms, it doesn't make any sense. Whenever I speak about living organisms, I should also take into consideration interactions of living organisms with non-living things. What do you mean by non-living things? Lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. And also interaction of living organisms with themselves, among themselves. These two things I should always take into consideration. If I just speak about living organisms, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, because living organisms need to interact with other organisms as well as with the non-living things in order to live. Okay? I hope it makes sense to you. So that is the meaning of biosphere. So I hope everybody understood this. This is very, very important, guys. If you have any doubts or if you did not understand this properly, please ask me. So generally, there is a misconception here. Whenever I say biosphere, students simply say biosphere means atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere. No, it's not like that. Biosphere is the biological component of Earth. Along with lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere, biosphere is the fourth component of the Earth. See, Earth is very unique. Earth is very special. Earth has living organisms. So, living organisms is a separate component. Okay. So, biosphere means all the living organisms together with dead organic matter, and not only that, interactions of living organisms with lithosphere, that means land mass, hydrosphere, that means all the water, and then atmosphere. Okay. If I just talk about living organisms, it doesn't make any sense. Whenever I speak about living organisms, I should also speak about the interactions of living organisms with all the non-living things. At the same time, interactions of living organisms with themselves, among themselves. Like for example, we all eat food, right? So from where do we get food? Food means plants and animals for us. So that means we are interacting with the other organisms in order to survive. As simple as that. Clear, right? So I hope everybody understood the meaning of biosphere. It's very, very important. Okay, moving on. Now, let us come to the most important concept, ecosystem. Very, very important. Now, ecosystem. I'll just try to explain this in a very simple way. Now, just imagine an aquarium. We all have aquariums, right, in our houses. So, what are the various things that are present in aquarium? First, you have the glass tank that holds everything together. And next you put in water, obviously. And then you put some gravel or stones at the bottom. And then you put few fish. and then you put in an oxygen pump or something, oxygen pump filter, okay, and then you feed the fish. So that system is aquarium. Now, if somebody asks me, where are fish living? I can simply say water. That is the habitat of fish. Now, fish are interacting with water. First of all, they are interacting with the glass tank, which holds everything together. Next, they are interacting with water. They are interacting with the oxygen pump. They are dependent on the oxygen pump for oxygen. And finally, the fish are also dependent on you because you have to feed the fish. So if I just look at the place where an organism lives, that becomes habitat. But in a habitat, no organism can live separately or isolatedly. Every organism has to depend or interact with the other organisms and also with the non-living things. So if I just look at the place where an organism lives, I call it as habitat. But if I'm also looking at the system of interaction that is present there, what do you mean by system of interaction? How an organism depends on non-living things at the same time on living things in order to survive. Then that system of interaction, or I can say that system of interdependency or that network is nothing but ecosystem. So basically there is no much difference between habitat and ecosystem. If I say habitat, it is just the geographical area, the place where an organism lives. But if I say ecosystem, I'm looking at the system of interaction or interconnectedness. Okay, how various organisms in the nature are depending on each other. They are interacting with each other and how they depend on the environment, on the non-living things, abiotic factors. That system of interaction or that network, basically, that system is nothing but ecosystem. I hope you're understanding. Okay. So first, living organisms, they interact with themselves. Okay. Next, they also interact with the non-living things. That system of interaction is nothing but ecosystem. As simple as that. So look at this definition. Very important and also very simple. It's very easy to understand, right? An ecosystem is the system of interaction in which the living organisms interact among themselves and also they interact with the surrounding physical environment. That is nothing but the abiotic factors like mountains, okay, air, sunlight, water, all these are non-living things, right? Soil. So that system of interaction or interdependency is ecosystem. Very simple, guys. When I say ecosystem, we are just looking at how the various things are connected to each other. How the various things, living things and non-living things are connected together. That network is nothing but ecosystem. As simple as that. Now, I can study the various interactions happening in a large ocean, then that ocean will become ecosystem. I can study the various interactions happening in a small drop of water. Yes, even a small drop of water contains microorganisms. If I study the interactions happening there, then that small drop of water will become ecosystem. I can study the interactions happening in a small garden, then that garden is an ecosystem. I can study the interactions happening in a large forest, then that forest is also an ecosystem. So in that way, ecosystems vary greatly in size, from a small pond to a large forest or a sea. As simple as that. Wherever I'm looking at interactions, that becomes ecosystem. As simple as that. Clear, right? Okay, so is this clear, guys? Any doubts anybody has, please ask me. Very simple, right? Okay, so I hope you understood the meaning of ecosystem. Just keep in mind the difference between habitat and ecosystem. Both are very similar. There is no great difference. When I say habitat, I'm looking at the area, the geographical area where an organism lives. That's it. But in a habitat, can any organism live separately? Absolutely not. Every organism, in order to survive, in order to live, must depend on other organisms. At the same time, must depend on non-living things like sunlight, air, water. So that means there is some interaction going on. Okay. So that system of interaction or interconnectedness, that network is nothing but ecosystem. Wherever I study interactions, that becomes an ecosystem. As simple as that. Okay. See, even your house is an ecosystem. Okay. You're all living organisms and you're depending on non-living things like the light bulb, the fan. Okay. You're watching this from your computer screen or your mobile screen. Even that is a non-living thing. You're interacting with it. Okay. And you interact with your family. Okay. So living organisms interacting among themselves, even that is an ecosystem. As simple as that. Now, look at this point. Very important. An ecosystem is the functional unit of nature. Now, what is the functional unit of life? The answer is cell. Cell is the functional unit of life. What do you mean by that? Cell is the most basic, or you can say fundamental living thing. We are all made up of cells. Human body contains some trillions or billions of cells. And every cell is also a living thing. So a group of cells combined together forms tissue. A group of tissues combined together forms organ. And all the organs combined together forms body of an organism. Right? So cell is the smallest or most basic living thing. So cell is the functional unit of life. In the same way, ecosystem is the functional unit of nature. So when I say nature, it is nothing but a large group of ecosystems together is nature. Okay. All the things that happen in nature will also happen in ecosystems. As simple as that. So in that way, ecosystem is the functional unit of nature. Very, very important point. Very important. So I'm hoping that you're all understanding. So you can type in your doubt in the live chat. I'll get back to you. I'm hoping that you won't have any doubts because these are very simple. Already we have learned all these things. But just bear with me for today and tomorrow. Because even if you know also, I need to cover all these basic concepts. I cannot ignore these because these are very important. So today, like this session and also the next session, tomorrow's session, we will be discussing about the basic concepts. And once we are done with that, we can move to the one of the most important chapters in the entire environment in ecology, that is ecosystem. Okay? As simple as that. So Pavitra, all ecosystems are biosphere. Okay, so again here, just try to understand the concept of biosphere. When I say biosphere, it means all the living organisms, along with that dead organic matter, along with that interactions of living organisms among, with each other, and also interactions of living organisms with non-living things. So this entire system is biosphere. Okay. Now your question is, all ecosystems are biosphere. So that is not the correct way to understand. All the ecosystems are part of biosphere. Or maybe that is what you meant. Yes, all ecosystems are biosphere. All the ecosystems are part of biosphere. When I say biosphere, it is nothing but a large bunch of ecosystems together is biosphere. Okay? So yes, as simple as that. Okay? Because in biosphere, we are not simply taking into consideration living organisms and dead organic matter. We are also taking into consideration interactions of living organisms among themselves and also interaction of living organisms with non-living things, that is lithosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere. So because we are taking interactions into consideration, I can simply say that biosphere is a combination of all the ecosystems on planet Earth. As simple as that. Clear, right? Very simple. Okay. So guys, I just wanted to share one thing with you. So this live lecture, you can watch in our app. Okay. In the environment and ecology course, I'm going to upload this live lecture. So from our app or from our web portal, you can watch this unlimited number of times. People who bought the course, they'll have access to this lecture videos unlimited number of times. The same applies for all the subjects. Okay. We have excellent faculty for society, history, economy. Okay. So I'll be dealing with environment, geography, science and technology, and polity and governance issues. Okay. There's no point in, teaching all those things which are already present in Lakshmikant's. Does it make any sense? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So basically, I won't be dealing with that. I'll be dealing with highly dynamic issues, current affairs, contemporary issues. That means those issues which have been in news since the last 3 or 4 years. Those are the favorites of UPSC. Okay. So I'll be dealing with the entire environment and ecology, science and technology, and geography, both the static part as well as dynamic part, current affairs. And apart from that, I will also be dealing with Indian polity and governance, but not that stuff which is already present in Lakshmikant, because Lakshmikant is like the Bible for polity, right? Everybody would be reading that. So there is no point in me explaining all that stuff which is already present in Lakshmikant. It is simply waste of time for you and me. So I will be dealing with polity and governance issues. Okay. And that is going to be a very huge course with more than 100 videos. Okay, I'm going to start that very soon, and that is very, very important. And apart from that, for the other subjects, we have other faculties also. And guys who bought the course, they will have access to all these lecture videos for 2 years, or I'm planning to keep it unlimited time, like no time restriction. Even after 2 or 3 years, also you can watch these videos n number of times. And not only that, as and when the new things keep on happening, we'll make videos on that, and we'll keep uploading all those videos in our app as well as web portal. Okay, so that is the benefit which you'll be getting. Okay then. Now, examples of ecosystems. Terrestrial ecosystems, that means land-based ecosystems, forest, grassland, and desert. Okay. So this is desert and this is grassland. What do you mean by grassland? I will discuss in great detail when we discuss the meaning of ecotone. So just don't worry about that. We still have so many topics to cover. And then aquatic ecosystems, that means water-based, pond, lake, and river. Now all these are freshwater ecosystems. You also have saltwater ecosystems, that is sea and ocean. What is the difference between sea and ocean? Very simple. Sea means a smaller area, ocean means the large one. As simple as that. Now, ecosystems can also be artificial ecosystems or man-made ecosystems. So, man-made ecosystems are crop fields and aquarium. I told you the example of aquarium, right? So, apart from that, agriculture, farm, that is the most important example of man-made ecosystem. Okay. And any more examples of man-made ecosystems you can give me? Our city is a man-made ecosystem. Our house is a man-made ecosystem. Okay. A classroom in a school is a man-made ecosystem. So all these are man-made ecosystems, artificial ecosystems. Now there is one important difference between man-made ecosystem and natural ecosystem which you have to understand. Natural ecosystems, they don't need any support. They can survive, they can function by themselves. They keep on functioning indefinitely. But man-made ecosystems are dependent on us. Like for example, take crop field. What if you don't apply fertilizer, pesticides, insecticides, the crops will dry? And also if you don't give water, crops will die. So man-made ecosystems are dependent on us for functioning, for survival. The same thing with aquarium also. But that is not the case with, natural ecosystems. And also there is one thing which is very important. I just want to give you a small introduction to that concept now. There is one more very, very, very important difference between natural ecosystems and man-made ecosystems. That is, in man-made ecosystems, biodiversity is very less. But in natural ecosystems, biodiversity is huge. Now, what do you mean by biodiversity? We have a separate chapter for this. It is one of the most important chapters, or I can say the most important chapter. There are few chapters, guys, which are extremely important. First, climate change. Second, biodiversity, wetlands. And apart from that, India's laws and policies, and then international conventions and treaties. All these are very important. So biodiversity, one of the most important chapters. We have a separate chapter, and it is going to take a very long time for me to finish that chapter. I'm going to cover that very comprehensively. The stuff that is not present in any textbook, I'm going to cover that. A combination of both static part as well as current affairs. Okay. Now, what do you mean by biodiversity? Very simple. The variety of life found in an area is biodiversity. As simple as that. If you think about paddy field, there is only one variety of plant there. What is that plant? Paddy plant. As simple as that. There is only one variety. But if you go to a forest, in a small area, there are so many varieties of plants. Okay. But if you go to paddy field or wheat field or whatever it is, they are called monocultures. What do you mean by monoculture? Over a large piece of land, only one organism is being cultivated or it is being grown. That is the meaning of monoculture. Okay. So that is again a very important difference between man-made ecosystems and natural ecosystems. Man-made ecosystems have very low biodiversity and natural ecosystems have excellent biodiversity. What do you mean by biodiversity? The variety of life, the variety of the different types of living organisms that are found in an area is biodiversity. Simple. Now, what is so important about biodiversity? If an ecosystem is rich in biodiversity, that ecosystem will survive for a very, very, very long time. But if an ecosystem is poor in biodiversity, it is highly unstable. It will collapse within a short span of time. Okay. Now, a forest is very, very, very stable compared to paddy field because forest contains more biodiversity. What do you mean by stability here? Stability means an ecosystem will be able to withstand biotic and abiotic stresses. For example, there is flooding. That is abiotic stress because water is non-living thing. Okay. A forest will be able to survive flood, but not a field, agricultural field that will collapse due to flooding. Okay. Or very high temperatures, even that is abiotic stress. A forest can survive that, but not agricultural field. Okay, so that is the importance of biodiversity. So very simple. First thing you need to keep in mind is man-made ecosystems have very low biodiversity. Natural ecosystems have excellent biodiversity. And what is so important about biodiversity? Natural ecosystems, which are rich in biodiversity, they have more ability to withstand biotic and abiotic stresses. But that is not the case with man-made ecosystems. These are highly vulnerable to biotic and abiotic stresses. That is the beauty of biodiversity. Okay. So anyway, don't worry about that. We have a separate chapter on biodiversity. Okay. Clear, right? Okay. I hope you understood this. Now moving on. Now, in the ecosystem, biotic and abiotic components are linked together through nutrient cycles and energy flows. So this is a very, very important concept. And after this concept, I'm just going to end this session because I don't want overload on first day. Okay, we'll take it very slow, but don't worry. Way before the exam date, we are going to cover all the subjects and all the syllabus. So just don't worry about that. Okay. Now, what do you mean by ecosystem? For you to understand this point, you need to remind yourself the definition of ecosystem. So what do you mean by ecosystem? The system of interaction between living organisms and non-living things. Very simple. Ecosystem is the system of interaction between living organisms and then in between living organisms and non-living things. That means in an ecosystem, you have both biotic components and abiotic components. Simple. Now, ecosystem means interactions. Okay. In 1 second, some millions of interactions happen between living organisms and also in between living organisms and non-living things. What are those interactions? Very simple. All those interactions can be grouped under two headings. First is nutrient cycle, second is energy flow. As simple as that. Just think about a forest ecosystem. You have both living organisms and non-living things in the forest. And interactions happen between living organisms and also in between living organisms and non-living things. In 1 second, some millions of interactions happen, millions or even billions and trillions of interactions happen. All those interactions can be classified under two headings. First is nutrient cycles, second is energy flow. Okay, So this is what happens basically in ecosystem, nutrient cycles and energy flows. Okay. Now for you to understand these concepts, you have to understand the meaning of nutrient first. For you to understand the meaning of nutrient cycles, you have to understand the meaning of nutrient first. So look at this. A nutrient is a substance used by an organism to survive, grow, and reproduce. For example, oxygen, that is a nutrient according to this definition. We use oxygen to survive, to grow. Okay. So nutrient is any substance used by an organism to survive, grow, and reproduce. As simple as that. Nutrients are compounds in foods essential to life and health. There are 6 major nutrients: carbohydrates, lipids, which are nothing but fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and water. These are the 6 major nutrients. Clear? Very simple. So I hope you understood this. Now, nutrient cycles. This is the next concept that we would be discussing. Very, very important concept. Nutrient cycles are biogeochemical cycles. The other name is biogeochemical cycles. So, biogeochemical cycles are the pathways by which nutrients flow between the biotic and abiotic components of the earth. Now, this is very simple actually. Don't look at the name and don't look at the definition and don't feel scared. It's very simple. Now, the amount of matter that is accessible to living organisms, or I can say the amount of nutrients that are accessible to living organisms, is finite. It is not infinite. Okay. Like for example, can any plant access the nutrients which are 1,000 kilometers deep inside the earth? Absolutely not. Okay. So the amount of matter that is accessible to the living organisms, that is finite. It is not infinite. So the same finite amount of matter should be recycled so that it is available for the other new living organisms which are just taking birth. I hope you understood. Very simple. The amount of matter that is accessible to living organisms, that can be used by living organisms, is finite. It is not infinite. Okay. For example, can the roots of the plants grow thousands of kilometers deep inside the earth or hundreds of kilometers deep inside the earth? Absolutely not. They can only grow up to few meters and they can access the nutrients there. That's it. So the amount of nutrients, or I can say the matter, that is accessible to living organisms is finite. It is not infinite. It is finite. The same limited amount of matter should be recycled so that it is available to the other new living organisms which are coming into existence, which are taking birth. I hope you understood. That happens through nutrient cycles or biogeochemical cycles. As simple as that. For example, when an organism dies, okay, its body will be decomposed by decomposers. This is a very, very important concept, so please try to understand this. Its body will be decomposed by decomposers. What do you mean by decomposers? Bacteria and fungi. Okay, they will decompose the dead body. What do you mean by decomposition? Very simple. Breaking down complex organic molecules into simple matter, simple nutrients. Okay, we are all made up of complex organic molecules. Okay, these complex organic molecules should be simplified. They should be broken down into simple matter so that that matter will be taken by new living organisms in order to survive. That is how matter is recycled. And the matter is recycled through biogeochemical cycles. That means I can simply say that in each and every biogeochemical cycle, decomposition is a very crucial step. I hope you're understanding this. So if you have any doubts, kindly ask me, guys. So very simple. We have various nutrient cycles. We have sulfur cycle, we have oxygen cycle, we have nitrogen cycle, we have carbon cycle, we have hydrogen cycle. All these are nutrients. Okay. We have potassium cycle, phosphorus cycle. All these are various biogeochemical cycles. All these are the nutrients that are required for living organisms. Now, these nutrients are in limited quantity. They are not in unlimited quantity. Okay. See, we cannot access the nutrients which are deep inside the earth, right? So, the nutrients which are available for living organisms, they are in finite quantity, not infinite quantity. So, the same nutrients have to be recycled over and over again so that these nutrients are available for the other living organisms. Okay. Now, we are all made up of complex organic molecules. So, when an organism dies, its dead body will be decomposed by bacteria and fungi. These are called decomposers. Now, what do you mean by decomposition? Breaking down complex organic molecules into simple nutrients. So, these nutrients will be taken up by plants. For plants, these are nutrients. Okay, plants will carry out photosynthesis. Plants will prepare their own food. Okay, through photosynthesis. What are the various things that are required for photosynthesis? Plants need sunlight, plants need carbon dioxide, plants need chlorophyll and water and nutrients. Without nutrients, how will they prepare their own food? Those nutrients are coming from the soil. The roots of the plants will take up the nutrients from the soil. Nutrients come through biogeochemical cycles. Nutrients come through decomposition. As simple as that. Okay. So, biogeochemical cycles are the recycling cycles by which nutrients flow between biotic and abiotic components of the earth. Let us break down this word. Biogeochemical cycles. Bio means living organisms, geo means earth. That means there is a cycle going on between living organisms and the earth. Okay. Now we are all made up of nutrients. When we die, our bodies will be decomposed and then the nutrients will go back to the earth. Okay. And again from the earth, nutrients will go back to living organisms. So it is a cycle. There is continuous flow of nutrients from earth to living organisms and again from living organisms back to the earth. That is the meaning of biogeochemical cycles. We have sulfur cycle, oxygen cycle, nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, potassium, phosphorus and many more. Okay. So bacteria and fungi, they decompose dead organic matter into nutrients. Okay. And these nutrients are taken up by plants and plants prepare their own food. Photosynthesis, and we eat plants, then the nutrients will come to us. As simple as that. Clear, right? Many of the nutrients that living things depend on, such as carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus, are in constant circulation through these cycles. What do you mean by circulation? From living organisms to earth, and again from earth to living organisms. As simple as that. So that is the meaning of biogeochemical cycles. Clear, right? I hope everybody understood this. Very simple. Okay. So guys, anyway, we'll just stop this session here for today. Okay, this is the first class, right? So I don't want any overloading of information. So this lecture video you can watch unlimited number of times from our app and from our web portal also. Okay, it won't be available in YouTube anymore. Okay, so you can watch from our app and web portal. And then don't worry, again tomorrow we are going to continue with the same concept and then we'll discuss the other concepts. So tomorrow we'll try to finish off the first chapter, the basic concept chapter. And then from day after tomorrow we can enter into the second chapter. Okay, so second chapter will be wetlands. Very, very important. So guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you understood all the concepts that we have discussed. I hope this was a fun learning experience. So thank you so much for joining me. Take care, keep watching, keep learning, and I wish you all the best.